In our continuing series on using the customer interview to test your business model canvas hypotheses, the topic in this video is your revenue streams and your pricing strategy. Hi, I'm Steve Morris, and I use this Startup SOS channel to provide practical how-to advice for first-time entrepreneurs. A very important section in your business model canvas is the revenue streams hypotheses. Now, that covers two key areas. One is how will customers pay? How will they pay in terms of, is it a subscription, or is it an asset purchase, or are you taxing a transaction each time it happens? So that's how would they pay. But the other key question is, how much will they pay? Those are the questions we'll tackle in today's video. Now, you no doubt have already a hypothesis on how you want customers to pay. As we've talked about in earlier videos, there are many, many different options. You could do an asset purchase, a per-use fee, a subscription, a rental, a lease, or maybe charge an hourly rate, or even charge a retainer, and the list goes on. You'll have your own hypotheses about how you expect to charge a customer. To test that hypothesis, you might start with some open-ended questions to try to understand what the customer's biases are, and then zero in on specifically testing your hypothesis. So for a start, maybe ask how it is they pay today for the current solution they're using to address the job to be done that you're focused on. And how do they feel about that particular way of paying? If it's a subscription, let's say, would they actually prefer a one-time upfront payment for, say, a software license or whatever? Get their feedback on what they like and don't like about the current way that they're paying. And then you might ask them for their ideas. Ask them how they think they should be able to pay for this kind of a solution. If they're currently doing, say, an asset purchase and they think a subscription or a rental would be a better approach, that's obviously very helpful for you to know. After you get that kind of open-ended feedback, then you might get more specific about your plans and how you plan to charge for the product or service you're developing, and get their feedback. You might explain why you're going to charge the way that you are. If it's going to be a subscription, maybe describe why that makes sense, or a rental, or charging for each usage, etc. And ask, does that make sense? Does that sound reasonable? Does it not? Get their feedback on the particular approach that you're planning to use. So that covers the way that customers are willing to pay. The other big question is, of course, how much. Now, this gets into the overall pricing question. And there are a lot of things you're taking into account when you're figuring out pricing. Certainly, part of it is the cost. What's the actual cost to develop and deliver the solution? And what margin do you have to have? In other words, what profit in the actual product sale? Because that's what pays for the overhead for your marketing and your engineering and the rent and so forth. So what's the actual product cost? What's your margin requirement? What's the competitive situation? And what is your positioning strategy with respect to the competition? So those are all important factors in coming up with a price. But the other important factor is the value pricing. In other words, what are customers willing to pay for the value that you are delivering? So how do you figure out the value price? Well, one way that turns out to be not very effective at figuring out what customers will pay is asking them what they will pay. That tends to get into all kinds of interesting gaming going on with a customer response, and it generally doesn't get you very useful feedback. An approach that can be a lot more useful and insightful is a thing called the Westendorp Price Sensitivity Meter. Kind of a funny name, but basically here's what it involves. First of all, it's an interview where you're going to talk to, I would suggest, at least 30 customers. Now, 30 is kind of an arbitrary number, but you need to talk to enough customers that you feel like you're getting a reasonable sample of what prospective customers think about the value and the price. More than 30 is better. If you can talk to 100 customers, that's much, much better. But I would say at least 30. Next, you have to describe the value. Describe what you're going to be delivering and why it has value, how it's going to help, eliminate the pain the customer is trying to eliminate and maximize the gain the customer is seeking. And of course, you have to describe that, yes, it's going to actually get the job done. Next, you have to explain how you're going to charge. Are you going to be asking about a monthly subscription, an annual subscription, a one-time purchase fee? Clearly, the customer needs to understand not only the value you're delivering, but how you're going to charge. Now, once they understand that, you're going to ask 4 questions. And those questions are, 1, at what price would the price just be too high? You wouldn't even consider it. At what price would it be too low? You'd think that can't possibly be a quality product. Again, you wouldn't even consider it because the price is too low. Third question, at what price would it be getting high, but you'd think about it? And then the fourth and final question, at what price would this just be a real bargain? Note that at no time are you asking them what they would pay. In a way, you're trying to help them cognitively triangulate how they think about the value. What would be too much, too little? What would be getting expensive? And what would be a bargain? You're literally helping them think through different options without actually asking them what they would pay. And again, that tends to give you more useful information. Now, it doesn't tell you exactly what the perfect price is, but here's what it does tell you. By putting together this data from at least 30 customers, and again, more is better, then you can take a look at the price you're thinking about charging and ask some useful questions like, what % of the customers I talk to would consider that to be too high? They wouldn't even consider it. Well, if the vast majority of prospective customers you talk to said that the price you're thinking about is too high, you might want to reconsider your pricing. Likewise, what % think it's too low? If a significant portion of the customers think that the price that you're thinking about is too low, again, might want to think about raising it. What % of customers think that the price you have in mind is getting high, but they'd still consider it? If a lot of customers think that, that might be pretty close to a reasonable price. And finally, what % of the customers that you talk to think that it would be a bargain? If a lot of them, if say a majority of them thought, wow, that's a bargain price, well, okay, you might not want to go any lower than that, and you might even want to get a little bit higher. So you can see how that's very useful feedback. It gives you at least some data on how customers are thinking about the price that you are considering. You did not, by the way, share that price with them before you did the survey. You're asking them those 4 questions without telling them anything about what you have in mind for the pricing. You're just taking that data from the survey of 30 or more customers and then using that to assess what you have in mind for a price. And that can give you some very helpful feedback. It doesn't absolutely say, here's the right answer for the price. But I think you can see how it gives you some useful feedback in deciding whether the price you have in mind is a feasible price or not. And I hope that's given you some ideas on how you can test your revenue sources and pricing hypotheses in your customer interviews. And another step in testing your business model canvas, and specifically, of course, another step in what's also called customer discovery. And that wraps up the last video on the customer interview. We've covered a lot of different aspects of starter questions that you can ask in your customer interview. If you'd like to get a very extensive list of starter questions that covers all the areas that we've talked about, there's a link in the notes where you can get on the list to receive that list of starter questions as soon as we finish compiling it. So don't miss out on that. And of course, you can see the entire sequence of videos on testing your business model canvas in this link that's right below me. If this was helpful, please click the like and share it. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave a comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that and hit the notification bell, because we certainly have lots more videos coming up for the first-time entrepreneur. That's a wrap for this time. Thank you very much for watching.